Our next discussion here, which is on Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety presentation to the Board of Supervisors on the wildfire insurance crisis. And just members of the public, this is, I believe, our third in a series of discussions and bringing experts and those stakeholders to the Board of Supervisors to really bring information to our public. As we've said many, many times, if it was up to us, we could, to set the insurance rate, we would be very happy, or maybe we wouldn't be so happy, but at least we wouldn't have the kind of problems that we're having right now. We, as a Board of Supervisors, have no involvement in setting insurance rates for the community or for our homeowners, and that this currently is solely in the hands of the insurance companies themselves and also the state of Arizona. Having said that, we're trying to get all these stakeholders together to look at maybe some ways that we can influence the insurance industry and look at some ways that we can be proactive in reducing our wildfire risks by home hardening, as well as ways that we can reduce our risk as for communities and mitigate wildfire risks across the various communities in Coconino County. So by doing this, it's an education process. It's an opportunity to hear from some of the experts in the field as we move forward in this. I think we're also going to open this up to try to hear more from individual stakeholders, individual homeowners. And I can tell you myself, and I know my colleagues have been receiving quite a bit of communication from homeowners in our districts who have either gotten the notice that they've lost their insurance and or that their insurance rates have skyrocketed. And I can guarantee you, we're all in this together. We're all in this boat together. And so it's important for us as Board of Supervisors to be proactive in how can we work with the stakeholders to try to help address the problem and hopefully come up with a solution. But I just want everybody to understand it is not within our control. I wish it was, but it isn't. And it's going to be in all of our control to do what we can to reduce our own, to mitigate what we can for our own homes and property, and then try to work together as a community with the stakeholders to see if we can reduce risk, which hopefully will also then decrease premiums and make insurance affordable and available. So just as a background on that, I want the public to understand our limited role. And I know we're going to continue this discussion, and I really want to give a lot of kudos to our Flood Control District Director, Lucinda Andriani, who, when this started to service, really kind of came to us as a board and said, hey, we need to try to do what we can to get, to the extent that we can, to get on top of this and to start this very, very important discussion. So I really appreciate that, and we're going to continue that and continue to move forward and continue to work with all of our community members to try to address this issue and to continue to put pressure on both the state and, quite frankly, possibly even the federal government as we try to ferret through this problem. So, that's kind of my background. I don't know if any other supervisors want to make some preliminary comments before we open this up. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll have an opportunity as we go forward. So with that, I'm turning this over to Lucinda Andriani, our Flood Control District Director. Thank you, Lucinda, for your hard work on this.
Yeah, I think Andy wants to make a few comments. Okay, great. So thank you, Chair and board members. It's good to be back today. As the Chair mentioned, this is the third in a series of presentations regarding the wildfire insurance crisis that's facing really the West, not just our county. The first presentation in June was an overview by Kimmy Barrett and Doug Green with Headwaters Economics, and I think that provided some good fundamental information. The second session on September 9th was a presentation by Ethan Aumann, who's with APCIA, which is an association that represents the insurance industry and is really taking the lead for the industry on this specific issue. I wanted to note that both of those presentations and the recordings of the meetings are on the Flood Control District website under a tile that says wildfire insurance crisis. And so that if there are members of the public that want to miss those and want to go back there, they can certainly do that relatively easily online, or they can reach out to us and we'll certainly provide that information as well. Today's main presentation is by Michael Newman, who is the General Counsel for the Institute for Business and Home Safety. IBHS, which is the acronym, is an institute funded by the insurance industry. And it's set up to conduct research and really has specifically looked at a full range of natural disasters over the years: earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, and now wildfire. And they develop the research, and then out of that research, they identify they identify standards and what are construction standards and other construction related and property related things that can be done to lower the risk of that particular type of natural disaster or other threat to private property. And today specifically, he'll be covering the wildfire research that they have done, which is pretty interesting. I know I shared a documentary that had been done by PBS that had some good information in there, highlighted a lot of the research that they had done. And then he'll also discuss a new program that they've developed, which is called the Wildfire Prepared Home. And then after Michael's presentation, we'll see if the board has specific questions for Michael. And then we'll have an update from Paula Trogi with the City of Flagstaff's Fire Department on they're doing have initiated a risk reduction program here in Flagstaff. And then also Jay Chrisselman will talk a little bit. Jay and I have met and on a couple occasions now, and have been discussing this next year, the community development, it would be their typical year to revisit building codes as part of their process, their ongoing process. And certainly now we're expecting that will involve looking at the fire code specifically as well. So he'll kind of provide an update there. I've been provided some cities and towns, well, primarily counties, I should say, counties, and some examples. I know he's been doing research on that. He may not have time to get into all that depth today, but give you some preliminary information as well. I've also reached out and had meetings with Missoula County, Montana, who's had a program in place now, I want to say 3 or 4 years. Boulder County, Colorado, who's had a program in place since 2014. Very robust, successful program. And then also recently, in a program, San Diego County in California has had a program for a number of years as well. So a lot of information out there in terms of what are different counties attempting to do to address this issue. And a lot of lessons learned. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Michael. A little bit of background about Michael is he serves, as I mentioned, as general counsel for the organization, and he is head of their public policy group and partnerships co-development teams as well. And again, really the focus has been, how do you reduce the risk to properties? Michael joined IBHS in 2020. He came from the U.S. Department of Treasury, where he worked on a range of domestic and international policy issues related to climate change, resilience, cybersecurity, and insurance supervision. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucinda. Thank you to the chair and to the board members. I'm really pleased to be with you today. I caught just the final remarks from the board chair as I signed on to the Zoom. And I heard you talking about the challenges you're having with the insurance market in Arizona that some homeowners are experiencing, and a sense of powerlessness. But I just want to really emphasize what you said afterward, which is, but we are in control of our own risk. And so often, I work with states all around the country and with families and communities all around the country. And it is at the county level where the rubber hits the road when it comes to the decisions that can make a difference in the level of risk or the level of resilience for families and communities. So I thank you all for your service and for your commitment to this issue on behalf of your county. I'm going to spend some time with you this afternoon talking about how science can inform policy to help bring down the risk of the devastating conflagrations that we see all around the western part of the United States. I'm going to share my screen. We have not had a chance to do a tech check, so we're going to hope that this works. One second. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can, Michael.
Excellent. So I want to dive right into Los Angeles. We all know what happened. Held by furious winds, the wildfires raced from hillsides to neighborhoods and destroyed over 16,000 structures and making thousands of families homeless just like that. But I want to share about a guy named Kit Katz. According to news reports, Mr. Katz lived with his dog in a 70-year-old house just below the Altadena golf course. It was probably the proximity to those open spaces that protected his home. But what if luck or happenstance or proximity to a golf course didn't dictate whether a family's home survives or burns to ash? That's the fundamental question we have in front of us. You see, at IBHS, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, we've identified a set of mitigation actions that can reduce the number of home ignitions and better protect our communities from wildfires. We can't eliminate those wildfires, but we can narrow the path of damage that's associated with them. A little bit about us. IBHS is a 501c3 nonprofit research institute. We're funded by the property insurance industry. And their investment allows us to recreate severe weather across the perils of wind, rain, hail, and wildfire, and to conduct full-scale testing of the built environment, our homes and our places of work, to identify vulnerabilities and close them with mitigations that are effective, achievable, and affordable. We do so ever mindful of the deep need to make our homes and our communities more survivable and more insurable. By survivable, I mean simply homes and communities that are better able to withstand the severe weather and the wildfires that we know they're going to face. So families can return home after the evacuation order lifts and get on with their lives. By insurable, I don't mean a guarantee, but rather the recognition that homeowners that invest in science-based, verifiable risk reduction make themselves more attractive to insurance companies. I'm going to dive into IBHS for just one more minute. It's really the research that drives change. We do events, media interviews, and more. We are all about actionable science that drives people to change their behaviors. Change is most evident after disasters, whether that's a hurricane, a derecho, a wildfire, a hailstorm, or a tornado. When some roofs are damaged, and fortified roofs, fortified being an IBHS program, are not, like here on this cul-de-sac after Hurricane Sally, or here in this neighborhood in Paradise, California. We are informed by our work in the field, observing fundamental hazard characteristics and studying the damage after disasters. Our research center enables us to do what no one else can. We can recreate severe weather. We can turn the knobs on Mother Nature. We have a 6-story airplane hangar with 105 wind turbines that produce winds in excess of 130 miles an hour. We don't do downscaled work. Everything is at full scale. Now, our full scale work on wind shows us how both residential and commercial structures perform as a system and the actions that we need to narrow the path of damage. We simulate wind-driven rain that amplifies losses, and our innovative thinking in hail research and testing is reshaping understandings of this peril and how to make our homes better withstand it. Our ability to recreate wildfire ember storms and conduct full-scale wildfire research gives us unparalleled insights into building ignitions, and it drives our wildfire prepared program. We do all of this, and I'm going to use an insurancy term here, to bend down the risk from natural hazards. So IBHS can carry out our mission to prevent avoidable suffering, strengthen homes and businesses, inform the insurance industry, and support thriving communities. So today we're here to talk about wildfire, and our increasing focus, really our primary focus in the wildfire space, is conflagration. We need look no further than what happened in Los Angeles earlier this year to see what can unfold when wildfires enter into communities. Now, conflagrations occur when the fire enters the built environment, our neighborhoods, and an uncontrollable structure-to-structure fire spread begins. I want to emphasize uncontrollable. While the efforts of fire services are honorable and valiant and brave, they simply can become overwhelmed by large-scale conflagrations. What happens when wildfires enter into the communities. At that point, it's about evacuation. It's about life safety. It's not about defending necessarily the structures anymore. We've seen an exponential increase in the number of structures destroyed by wildfire since 1990. But I want to make clear that conflagration is actually not something that's new. Now, consider this quote. But none spread so wide or caused as much damage as the city mainly consisted of wooden buildings tightly packed together along very narrow streets. This poorly built urban sprawl, together with dry weather and a strong easterly wind, created the perfect conditions for the rapid spread of the fire. I want to invite questions and invite interruptions here, but can anybody guess which fire this is referring to? I can't hear anybody. I don't know if there are guests.
Is it the London fire of 1666? That's what's on my.
Ding, ding,
Ellie?
ding, ding, ding.
Okay.
The London fire. You are the first person who has ever gotten this question right. So,
Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We've got the answer in front of us.
oh, you looked ahead. That's not fair.
Oh,
Well-
you asked.
So, the London Fire of 1966, and here's the reason I like to highlight this quote. We have been dealing with the challenge of conflagrations for centuries. In the urban environment, in the city environment, we solved it. But then we went and recreated all the same building practices that led to urban conflagration in the suburban context. We already solved for this, but we have to make, and we can solve it again, but we have to make different choices. So conflagration, here are the drivers of conflagration. On the one hand, it's people, drought, and wind. And if I go back to that quote, people, drought, and wind, right? Dry weather, that's drought. Strong easterly wind. The city was tightly packed together. That's where all the people lived. People, drought, and wind. It was true in 1666, and it's true in 2025. So people, drought, and wind are the factors that impact whether a conflagration happens in the first place. And then as we look at structure, density, connective fuels, and building materials, those are the factors that impact just how bad the conflagration may be. And when these factors come together, the result can be devastation. Dr. Jack Cohen, who many consider to be a father of wildfire science, says, and I quote, "Community wildfire risk should be defined as a home ignition problem, not a wildfire control problem." That is to say, we cannot suppress or control our way out of a wildfire crisis. But there are things that we can do and policies that Arizona can embrace to help reduce the likelihood of its neighborhoods looking like this. So, how do we do it? What are they? What are the actions we can take? Well, it's actually really simple in theory. When we reduce home ignitions, we can also reduce conflagrations. And when ignitions do happen, because they always happen, we have to break the pathway of the fire so it doesn't spread. This requires individual accountability and collective action. It's simple, but it's not easy. Not easy, but possible. Wildfire science is finally delivering answers and solutions. I'm going to spend the next chunk of time walking you through our understanding of wildfire and how IBHS science is helping to move it forward, both from a partial level and a community level. And then I'm going to talk about the solutions that can help your county and others like it enhance the survivability and insurability of your homes. So I want to start at that parcel level where an individual home is. Now, wildfires have three ignition mechanisms: embers, flames, and radiant heat. When wildfires enter into a community and start attacking structures, all three ignition mechanisms are happening. Flames make the news, but it's actually embers that are often how fire first enters into a community. When those embers ignite spot fires around a structure or ignite the structures themselves, those ignitions lead to more embers and to flames. And then burning structures or burning vegetation or fences or even cars produce radiant heat, and all three can ignite still other structures. Once you add wind, it exacerbates the conditions, fanning flames and carrying embers even deeper into suburban neighborhoods. Addressing these actions requires a collective set of mitigation actions. As I mentioned before, we know that homes must battle both embers and flames in a wildfire scenario. So our research at the lab has allowed us to examine how to combat both of these, learning more about the nuances of specific components that matter in the sequence of ignitions. Now, both of these clips are from earlier this year in Los Angeles. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an inside look at research that we conduct at IBHS at our facility in South Carolina. It allows us to see how homes are threatened by wildfire as embers aloft in the wind. And where those embers collect drives the mitigation actions that we need to take around the building. As you can see in this side-by-side, one structure built with wildfire resiliency measures, the other is not. They're subjected to the very same embers, the very same wind. One is a flame ready to be consumed, and the other is not. We're also able to conduct structure-to-structure experimentation on the concrete pad outside of our test chamber. That allows us to better understand these community dynamics of wildfire risk. Now, something I want to highlight for you as incredibly important is defensible space. Now, most building codes are focused on the structure, but when it comes to wildfire, we need to think about hardening the structure and having the right type of defensible space. And when it comes to defensible space, it's the 5 feet closest to the home that is most important. You can see it on the screen in this time-lapse photograph where the embers alofted by or carried by the wind are kind of collecting in a vortex that the wind makes at the base of the structure. That's where they sit. And if there's anything that's combustible in that 5-foot area, in that zone of protection, it can ignite. And then it's that ignition that transfers flames to the home itself. You'll see it in this video. The structure, the home and defensible space on the right has that 5 feet of non-combustible space, that zone of protection. On the left, however, you have mulch, you have vegetation, you have a wooden fence that is going all the way up to the structure. And what you can see is over time, the flames are inexorably leading to the house. They've now actually transferred and ignited the home. Whereas on the right, this area, this moat, if you will, is keeping the home protected. Fundamentally, This is or may be the difference between a family that's able to come home after an evacuation order and a family that comes back and just is sifting through ashes. This is how important that defensible space in that first 5 feet is. And as you're thinking about solutions, we'll get to policy later. I hope you think about strong defensible space requirements with a particular attention to the 5 feet closest to buildings. When mitigation actions are made to the structure and the surrounding defensible space, we can meaningfully reduce the risk of home ignitions. So the science has led to a set of critical mitigation actions to reduce home ignitions. Again, it is a system of actions. Wildfire is the type of peril that will exploit any weak links. So this is a system, and I emphasize that again, a system, because they must all be taken to reduce the risk of wildfire igniting a home. So a Class A roof is a necessary step. Also the defensible space that I mentioned before, and that extends beyond the 0 to 5 foot area. But the most important part is in that 5 foot area. And then some basic building features: ember resistant fence, having 6 inches of vertical non-combustible clearance at the base of a wall. All of these actions that you're seeing here are to reduce the risk of ignition from embers. And remember, in a wildfire context, embers can be blown by the wind sometimes more than a mile ahead of where the flames of a wildfire are. Okay, now let's turn to the community dynamics of wildfire and the neighborhood level actions that can reduce the risk of that conflagration I mentioned earlier. Now at IBHS, we assess community dynamics of wildfire risk through modeling, through field observations, and through experimental testing at our research center. So a word more on that testing. After a wildfire, you're really left trying to piece together clues from mere ash. I have been to Lahaina, I have been to Los Angeles, and you can't really tell what happened. The ash doesn't explain how fire reached a home. It doesn't explain what caused the initial ignition. It doesn't explain how it moved beyond the neighboring structures. To answer these questions, you actually need to watch a building burn without stopping it on purpose. So at IBHS, we sacrifice individual structures in a controlled environment so we can save future neighborhoods. And this is what we've learned. While the landscapes of Hawaii and Arizona are vastly different, once wildfire enters into a suburban or urban environment, it doesn't care whether the scenery is coastal or desert. The way that it engages with the built environment is the same. And so I'd ask you to pay attention closely to the kind of dynamics of the wildfire in the neighborhood and pay a little bit less attention to the beautiful Pacific Ocean in the background. We know that the factors of structure spacing, connective fuels, and building materials are the key factors influencing conflagration. Now on Front Street in Lahaina, you can see here where the yellow box is, a home that survived. And look to see how much further the spacing is from the houses across the street than the homes right next door, which were closer in. When you have more structure spacing, your exposure to flames and to heat is reduced. Here's the front of the house. You can see some charring on the fence, but it did not reach the home itself. So next, connective fuels. Connective fuels are natural pathways that enable fire to spread through flame and radiant heat between structures. It's how the fire gets from home to home to home to home in a chain. They can follow these pathways through man-made fuels like fences or even cars or garbage cans. Or it can be vegetation, privacy hedges, trees, and the like. In either case, we need to break the pathways that fires take from parcel to parcel, structure to structure, and able to reduce the risk of conflagration. And finally, exterior building materials. How we build oftentimes puts a thumb on the scale in preventing the spread of fire in a conflagration. Building materials, ones that are ignition resistant, are what we look for. While not fireproof, these materials give homes a fighting chance. It's a thumb on the scale in the balance against a wildfire strength. I want to highlight, though, that if buildings are too close together, if you don't have that critical attention to structure spacing, then the ferocity of wildfires can overcome even strong exterior building materials. Again, like at the parcel level, this is a system. You've got to do it all to reduce your risk. So one last note before I get into our wildfire prepared program. Wildfire does its damage in the extremes. I've long been struck by this statistic. Less than 1% of all wildfires lead to over 95% of all structure loss caused by wildfires, which is to say, only the very worst wildfire on the very worst day is the one that's going to impact your community. But if that one shows up, it can do a lot of damage. So, wildfire requires a system of mitigation actions that can protect against embers and flames and heat on the very worst of days. IBHS's Wildfire Prepared program responds to that need. Wildfire Prepared Home has a focus on ember ignition. Wildfire Prepared Home Plus has an additional set of mitigation actions to protect against flames and heat. These will look familiar. I went through them earlier, but this page is really useful to have for your reference. It includes all the mitigation actions that can protect against, on the bottom in orange, embers, and then in blue on the side, radiant heat and flames. Wildfire Prepared Home is relatively easy to address on a retrofit basis. You're not dealing with a lot of structural changes, presuming that you have a Class A roof, and most, not all, but many roofs are Class A. It's not a lot of major structural work. The expense is largely going to be in the defensible space zone of removing anything combustible from that 5-foot area around your home. Wildfire Prepared Home Plus has more of this building material choices that in all likelihood are easier to do at new construction than in retrofits, but it is still possible to achieve a Wildfire Prepared Home Plus designation from a retrofit perspective. So I said designation. What is this? Here is how it works. The Wildfire Prepared is a voluntary program where individual homeowners can apply to IBHS to get a designation from us that says their home meets the requirements of the technical standard for wildfire prepared. A homeowner will go on to wildfireprepared.org. They'll apply and pay an initial application fee. Then they have to submit photographs of the outside of their home. This is for eligibility purposes. We review those because the majority of applicants that don't achieve a designation don't achieve it because their defensible space is wrong. So that's an initial step to make sure that the defensible space is correct. Once that happens and that checks out, they're eligible, then we send out an inspection company that takes more photographs, does more documentation of all the different aspects of the wildfire prepared technical standard. That then goes back to us for quality assurance review. And assuming it all checks out, the homeowner receives a designation. That designation is good for 3 years, subject to an annual landscape review that can be done by submitting photographs, again, using one's phone. The reason we have this annual landscape review is because green stuff tends to grow back. And sometimes people make choices along the way. They might remove certain vegetation when they're applying, but then forget or change their mind and then move it back, and then the risk has gone back up. So we want to make sure that they are continuing to meet our technical requirement throughout the 3-year designation period. After 3 years, a homeowner can reapply for a new designation. Wildfire Prepared is now available in California, Oregon, New Mexico, and Nevada. There are three things that will bring our program to a new state. The first is action by a property insurer in Arizona that's a member of IBHS, and most of the large insurance companies are IBHS members. If they base a business decision, be that a rate filing or an underwriting guidelines on Wildfire Prepared or incorporate that into their business, we're going to show up in the state. Second, builder action. If a large builder is doing a new neighborhood and they want to do it to our standard, then we will show up and meet them in a state and make the program available. And then finally, state action. New Mexico just invested $10 million in a grant program to try to bring more homes up to the Wildfire Prepared program. It's actually what brought us into the state. So that's how we end up in a new state. I am very hopeful that one of those three things will bring us to Arizona soon. But certainly the science that underlies Wildfire Prepared is available, whether or not we are operational in a state, no matter what. So you can mitigate at the parcel level, but what about the whole neighborhood? We need entire communities to mitigate so that we can break that chain of conflagration and allow neighborhoods to act as a fuel break instead of a fuel source. We know that when mitigations go from parcel level to neighborhood level, we can save whole communities. We've already seen this success in other contexts. So the goal of our Wildfire Prepared Neighborhood Standard, which we have rolled out, it is available. You can review it at wildfireprepared.org. It's piloting in some communities right now, and then it's going to go live in more places next year. The goal was to develop an adaptive system and process to provide a system of mitigation actions for a neighborhood, but also to provide a benchmark for understanding a neighborhood's risk from conflagration. Here are the basics. The way the methodology works is it breaks a given neighborhood into two zones. The neighborhood, and it breaks them down into these zones based on the fuel loads coming from a 360-degree view around the neighborhood. So the neighborhood ember zone, we require has wildfire prepared home, that ember ignition piece. The homes in the neighborhood ember zone must be the wildfire prepared home. The neighborhood flame zone requires that the homes have a higher level of resilience to be prepared against its Wildfire Prepared Home Plus, which will help protect against those flames and heat. The core principles of Wildfire Prepared is we want to prevent initial ignitions, but we know that initial ignitions will still happen. So when they do happen, we want to slow the spread of fire within the neighborhood. And I said this before, but I'm going to say it again because it's worth repeating. We want the neighborhood to act as a fuel break, not as a dense fuel source. I mentioned earlier that I was in Lahaina, and we were there after we had done a post-disaster investigation, and we were sharing our findings with county staff, actually, in Maui County. And after our presentation, one of the staffers raised his hand to make a comment. And he said, you know, one of the pictures that you showed, because when we do a post-disaster investigation, we are focused on the homes that survived to better understand that. Because as I mentioned, there's not much you can tell from a pile of ash. So he said that white house that you showed, that was my father's house. He was a firefighter and he knew what to do. And he was really, really careful. And we didn't have any vegetation near our home. He paid really close attention to how the home was built because he knew the danger from fire. But the thing is, he went on to say, it wasn't just my father's house that was protected. It was the 5 houses behind it. You see that his father's good decisions had made a fuel break that protected his neighbors a few houses back. So even though there was devastation around, there was this pocket of homes that survived because of the decisions of that one individual. So at IBHS, we define conflagration as greater than 10% structure loss in a neighborhood. That is the design level we are targeting with Wildfire Prepared Neighborhood. That's what success looks like. If and when a wildfire enters a community and an initial home ignites, can we keep the losses to below 10% of the neighborhood? If we can do that, then we're winning. Another consideration, and it's a pretty large one. This can really help our fire services do their jobs better. When neighborhoods can passively repel conflagration, firefighters can focus on putting out the flames that do ignite while also concentrating on life safety and evacuations. This makes everyone safer, including our fire services. So we are continuing to work with major builders. This summer, we joined KB Home to celebrate the opening of Dixon Trail, which will be the first wildfire prepared neighborhood. Dixon Trail is in Escondido, California. Neighborhoods built with science-based and verified risk reduction are easier to insure. Homes that are easier to insure are easier to sell. And so it's really a win-win-win proposition in that respect. So fundamentally, wildfire is different from all other risks. When it comes to wildfire, we are our neighbor's keeper. Our neighbor's actions absolutely impact our risk and our resilience, and vice versa. What I hope you take away from my comments is that we can take action. We can lower our risk and enhance the survivability and insurability of our homes and our communities all throughout your county. We just have to do it together. So thank you very much. I appreciate your attention across the last 30 minutes or so, and I am happy to take any questions you have.
First, thank you for this presentation. It was engaging and incredibly informative. So I want to thank you for that, and really appreciate your time spent with us here this afternoon. I am going to open it up for some questions here I have a couple myself, but I'm going to open it up to my colleagues first. Any comments, questions here, members of the board? Yes, Supervisor Ontiveros.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newman, for that presentation. And as you know, this is the third in a series of what we call the wildfire insurance crisis. And at the beginning of your presentation, you talked about how the mitigation can make it attractive to an insurer, but does not necessarily mean it's going to be insured. And I think that is kind of what the problem has been, is that we've been trying to make it attractive. In some ways, I feel like we've almost been throwing the kitchen sink at things. And we still have insurers canceling policies or raising rates so high, as you know, that it makes it, it's an effective cancellation. So as I continue to listen to your presentation, in the previous two presentations, we have heard something called the certification program. Is that what you were referring to when you were saying that, and if an insurance company, let's just talk about Arizona because it is not here, and a large insurance company reached out and said, we would like to have you come in. Is that where we start doing what you just suggested, and we basically get a certification that then says you are insurable now and you're going to get your insurance?
So let me unpack. There's a lot there, and I understand it's a very complicated topic. So let me unpack just a few things. First, we are funded by the insurance industry, but unlike APCIA, who spoke to you at the last session, I don't represent the insurance industry. So I can tell you that every insurer, in my experience, reflecting on conversations I've had with them, approaches these issues a little bit different, has different risk tolerances, has different exposures that they're willing to have or not have. So every insurance company is going to be a little bit different. Here's what I know from 5 years at IBHS, though. Here's what insurers need to see. One, they want risk reduction that they know works, that is grounded in science. And that's why they invest in IBHS, so we can conduct the science and come up with the mitigation actions that are proven to work. Second, they want verification, right? We all have that that inclination to be like, oh, yeah, I did 80% of what I meant to do. So I'm just going to say I did it and hope for the best. That's a human thing. Um, Insurers want, particularly with wildfire, when it is necessary to do a whole system of actions, they want verification that all those actions have been undertaken. When you can marry science-based risk reduction with verification, that gives confidence to the insurance company. Now, it doesn't mean that every insurance company is going to be competing to insure a given home, but it makes, as I said before, a homeowner, a policyholder, more attractive. I can't give any kind of promises or guarantees in that respect, but the indication we've gotten from our members is that this is something that they are looking for. They pushed us to create this designation program. So let's say that we do come to Arizona, and I hope we will soon. If a homeowner in your district gets a wildfire prepared designation, takes all the actions to reduce their risk, that helps them in two ways. One, it really does make their home safer from the risk of wildfire. And I always want to start with that because the reason I started doing this work, my why, if you will, is because I think every child deserves to live in a house that they can come home to. And my kids have that. I want all kids to have that. And so that survivability really can't be undersold. We can't make a house fireproof, but we can reduce the risk it's going to ignite. But then also, it should make them a more attractive risk for the insurance companies so that if they do get non-renewed for whatever reason, there are other insurers waiting in the wings saying, hey, that's business that we want. I can't speak to any particular, uh, specifics on that, but what we have heard back from our member companies is we think this does reduce risk. This is what we're looking to do.
Do a follow-up.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, I have one.
Oh, okay. So, okay, and I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you that if a homeowner does do the mitigation, regardless, he or she is going to have a benefit.
Yeah.
So, kind of towards, again, at the end of your presentation, you were talking about the less than 10% in a neighborhood. So if I'm understanding that correctly, if you have a neighborhood of 100 homes and 90 have done the right thing, but you have 10, the one, you're going to have those in the neighborhood that are just not going to cut the trees, they're not going to do the mitigation. Did I understand that you were saying that if a neighborhood reaches that level, it doesn't have to be 100%, but an insurer would be far more, it would be far more attractive? Because we have that. I
Right.
think probably a lot of neighborhoods do, where you've got neighbors that just aren't going to do it.
Yeah, so I think two things. One, from the insurance perspective, and really just from, let's call it from the risk perspective, it is good to have a partial level, a home that has reduced their partial level risk. It is better when let's go good, better, best, right? It is good for a home to do the partial level risk reduction. It is better if everyone on their street has done the partial level risk reduction. It is best if their entire neighborhood has done the partial level risk reduction. I think that's true of the risk, and it's probably true for how insurers think about these things. What I said with the 10% is we expect that wildfires on those worst days, remember 1% of wildfires cause 95% of structure loss. So on the very worst days, we expect that there will be losses of homes in neighborhoods. What we would like to get to a point to, though, is where those losses are limited. So in the 100-home neighborhood, if only 10 homes burn in a wildfire, it's heartbreaking for those 10 families. And yet, from a neighborhood protection standpoint, it's successful because the other 90 didn't burn as well.
Hey, thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's established neighborhoods and there's new, building new neighborhoods.
Yep.
So when you're dealing with, which many of what we're dealing with here in Flagstaff are established neighborhoods, and where the homes have already been built, and I have no idea if you've got an idea or a ballpark on the cost for bringing these homes. I know you talked about the roofs are probably going to meet the standards, but everything else, in fact, probably isn't. So
Yeah.
do you have a ballpark on the cost of something like that?
It varies so much from state to state that it's hard to say, both in terms of the cost of building in your area of Arizona, as well as the style of the homes and the like. I'd say the bulk of the cost for wildfire prepared home, that's the Ember base level, is going to come from defensible space. And so to the extent the neighborhoods have that more desert aesthetic where there's probably a lot of combustible material that's already not in that first 5 feet, it might be less expensive. Beyond that, it's often, putting in ember resistant vents. That might be a $50 or $100 job. That's not much. So depending on the cost of the defensible space, it might be in the thousands of dollars. It might be a little less. You made a really good point about existing neighborhoods versus new neighborhoods. Building codes, which I strongly encourage you all to think about, and we'd be happy to work with you and your staff offline on that, can be really, really effective for both for new construction and then defensible space as well. But we do have this problem of many neighborhoods that were built decades before we had the current understandings of what it takes to reduce the risk of wildfire. We recognize that not every neighborhood can get to the level of wildfire prepared neighborhood that we've set out. So one of the things that we're working on and we'll make public is a stair-step approach for those neighborhoods. Even if they can't get up to wildfire prepared neighborhood, what are some reasonable steps that they can take over time to try to reduce their community level risk?
So you have listed California, Oregon, New Mexico, and Nevada as states where they have basically working with you and the wildfire prepared programs of IBHS. In those, and I don't know this, and maybe Lucinda does, but what are the insurance rates in those states?
It depends. So again, with insurance regulated at the state level, the dynamics of every state really are different. And you do not want to be bored by a disquisition on the California insurance market. I'm sure that many others could tell it to you with greater experience than me. But it's hard to compare across states. What I
So
can tell you,
I'm sorry, what are you then, IBHS, not you, but your company doing to help to facilitate the relationship with the insurance companies for adopting these standards, if you will, to reduce insurance rates or at least provide insurability?
yeah. So I think we work with all of our members. Our information is available to them. We are, as a 501c3, our almost all of our information, our guidance is available publicly. I'd encourage anyone watching along at home to go on to ibhs.org or wildfireprepared.org and learn more about the wildfire risk reducing that you can do in your own home. We also work with our insurance companies about that, but we do not get into their business decisions. We are prevented from doing so by state and federal antitrust laws. I can tell you that I serve on Arizona State Wildfire Resiliency Committee or working group. I'm not quite sure what the name of it is. It's within the Department of Insurance or the Department of Financial Institutions for the state. And we're having these conversations at the state level as well. I would like nothing more than somebody to take action in a way that would allow us to come to Arizona. And I think that's going to happen in the not too distant future. And to be clear, that just is what brings our program operationally to a state so that a homeowner can apply to get a designation from us. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, that's because I didn't turn my mic on. So if the homeowner applies, goes through the process that you've laid out for us, is there a cost to the homeowner for this certification and evaluation and certification?
Yeah, at present, it is, I believe, $125 to an application fee. So it's not, I realize that that is out of reach for some people, but it's not exorbitant. It helps pay for the inspection costs, as well as some back office things. It is not a revenue generation tool for us. And there are, I think the main cost associated with this, I should just reiterate, is in actually doing the work to reduce the risk.
Any other comments, questions, members of the board? Supervisor Begay.
Well, thank you for the presentation. I think, looking back with the other presentations that were done and then looking at this, it seems to me that we have to go back to the people that own the homes and, there's a lot of education. Look around, do inspection around their homes and, because there's additional mitigations against getting into getting flames and stuff like that that was expressed in here, like just covering your gutters and upgrade windows and doors and upgrade them to non-combustible decks and all of this, and then plus the roof also ensuring that the roof is a Class A type of roofing. So all of these are things that, I think something that we as a county really need to look at with the homeowners. And then from there, try to upgrade ourselves, to see how we can get insurance. So that's the way, with the whole presentation, it just kept going back to the community. So I guess we just need a push start, and that's what we're looking for. Where do we go? How do we go about it? To get the insurance, the insurability, to our homeowners, because it has to happen too. So I just want to say thank you for the presentation. And I feel that, it's going to be a responsibility that we have to, it's an individual responsibility for the homeowners. But, on the flip side of that, we as the county board of supervisors and administration, we have to be role models and, to try to go forward and, move it on. And thank you, Lucinda, and thank you for your staff, for really trying to put various things on the tables for us, to really understand, how, or really try to help our people that live out there that to get insurance and lower the insurance or whatever it may be that we need to do. So I know a lot of places in like big cities, they have homes that are within maybe a fourth of an acre. They're just side by side, and this one is some areas are calling for 5-foot non-combustible zones, and then also 5 to 30 foot the defensible space zones. Those are things that it needs to be I guess addressed, and I think that would be better approach. And so that's what I'm thinking. So I just want to thank the presenter for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Begay. Just to emphasize something you said, it is absolutely about individual accountability and collective action at the county level. And forgive me, I don't know all the actions that you are already taking. But WUI codes, defensible space codes, education, you're right, is so critical. So to the extent it's possible and financially feasible, investing in education and home assessment programs. I also think, frankly, and sometimes this is more state than county, but incentives. Are there any ways that your county can find to, whether it's through taxes or through other means, incentivize these collective sets of risk reducing actions? These are all tools in the toolbox. None of them are a panacea, but they can all help move the needle and drive consumer change.
We in Coconino County, as you know, is our one of the highest areas of risk of wildfires. And so one of the things City of Flagstaff, Coconino County, Forest Service, our private partners have done is try to reduce or mitigate that risk of catastrophic wildfire. But as you say, you can't suppress or control yourselves out of wildfire, and we get that. I think we can do what we can to mitigate and reduce that risk. And then, as you say, it is individual accountability and collective action. And quite frankly, I think that that's been the approach, Coconino County, I think that's been the approach of the city of Flagstaff. But we then need to know that when we do this, that we work together to do this, that it is going to produce the results that we're all looking for. And that is to have insurability and premiums that we can afford. And I think that's going to take all of us. And I think it's going to take government action.
You are having conversations that I am hearing throughout the West. And I can't speak for any particular insurance company. I can tell you that reducing risk is always a good idea for your community, and that there are separately, hopefully the insurability will come along as well.
All right, any other comments, questions? Supervisor Fowler?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. What have you seen in the communities you're working with? How much of the reduction in insurance costs have you seen? And also the insurability, what's the percentage of increase have you seen?
They're great questions. They're hard ones for me to answer. Nevada and New Mexico, Wildfire Prepared Home has been active in those states for about 24 days or so. So I don't think we've seen anything quite yet in those two states. Oregon has been around a little bit longer, but not much. And frankly, there aren't a lot of designations there yet. The program is just getting off the ground in that state. And California is just its own beast. 30 seconds on California. The California insurance market has been regulated in such a way for decades that, generally speaking, insurance industry thinks that the prices are significantly below what the risk would dictate, and there are regulatory pressures that prevent them from raising the price. The price of insurance, notwithstanding all the wildfires in California, the price of insurance in California is significantly less than other states like Oklahoma, for example. And so that just makes it a very difficult environment overall. So it's very hard to say. In a state where there's a healthier insurance market, where prices are seen as being on par with the risk, if you can reduce your risk, you should see a reduction in the price as well.
Okay, thank you. And I do have a question for Lucinda or Jay. Where in Coconino County do we see a community, a neighborhood that is that is ready or almost ready as to what is being presented with all the criterias?
They are very rare, I would say, particularly the existing built environment. It's very rare. I mean, but there are a few developments, a couple of developments that have adopted some code, I won't say adopted codes, but adopted their own standards,
Madam Chair and Supervisor Fowler, thank you, Jay Christelman, Community Development. So some of the most recent subdivisions that we've approved in the county are under Firewise principles. That was included in our subdivision ordinance in 2018 update. So anything that's been approved since then does adhere to Firewise principles, but that's more about defensible space, ingress and egress for our fine firefighters, and to get the public out, more so than structure protection. However, two subdivisions that have been approved recently, Kachina Highlands off of Tovar, as well as Walnut Creek Meadows off of Loop, those have sprinklers. Their HOA requirement is to have sprinklers in those homes. The state statute prohibited counties from requiring sprinklers in single-family detached dwellings years ago. So that's not something we can require, but to that point, 60% of county residents are on hold water. So that is a very difficult circumstance to require sprinklers for those homes. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I may again, I'm just wondering, what is the county authority on this? Because of just what you brought up, the state, what their policies or laws are compared to here, and then also the building code that we have. This is a whole it's a system that's that is used, that Mr. Neiman uses and his company, and to reduce or else to get homeowners insurance, and yet I'm just wondering how that would apply here, and if there's even a house that would be eligible. And we have the Firewise program, but we don't have the structural, just as you mentioned.
Why don't I just speak to, and then Jay's going to present a little bit here about the codes piece.
Oh, okay.
So I think relative, and the chair's discussion right at the beginning, where the authority over insurance companies rests with the states.
It
Very
is.
little authority at the federal level, virtually no authority at the local level. Jay will speak to the codes element. One thing I wanted to ask Mr. Newman was, so there are communities and particularly counties, I mentioned a couple early on, Missoula, Boulder County, San Diego County, that have moved ahead with programs or have had programs in place for quite some time. Is IBHS willing to look at, endorsing those programs or working in concert with those programs versus you have to pay IBHS, who then is going to bring in a private entity to then do the program. If a governmental entity like City of Flagstaff is doing assessments now, is IBHS willing to work with those communities on establishing those programs, who then would be, I don't think you all charge, right? Your assessments for free. That the program then could be offered to anyone irrespective of cost. I mean, I understand that if people went through a training to be certified, which would be very legitimate, there'd be a cost to that, to certify those individuals doing the assessments and the certification. But I guess I would just put out there that I think, that there's going to need to be a range of mechanisms to deliver it, not just through the private sector.
Yeah, so a few responses. First, I want to respond to something Superintendent Fowler said, and that is, I just want to emphasize these actions can be undertaken by anyone. None of us are powerless. None of us live in a house where we say, well, I can't do anything. So the wildfire prepared home base level for ember, protecting against ember ignition, can truly be done by just about any homeowner. And regardless of where their house is, how close it is to their neighbors, or how old their home is. And so there are actions we can all take regardless of where we are today. And our job collectively together is to help bring people along and help them feel empowered to take those actions that they can take. Lucinda, in response to your comment, I think we are open absolutely to working and partnering with government entities at all levels, of figuring out ways to deliver education, to deliver mitigation services, to deliver inspection services. I can't get into the program administration, how it will play out in different places around the country. What I described to you is, generally speaking, how the program works today. Is there opportunity for us to take another look in your county or elsewhere? Potentially. And we want to work with you to figure that out. But I can't
Great.
sit here today and make any promises. We do want to be value add and particularly like Boulder County is a great example. The Boulder County Wildfire Partners group has been around for years and they're fantastic. And we are, in all likelihood, going to be growing into Colorado at some point in the near future. And it is not our intention to replace that excellent work. It's our intention to complement it and to help think of us as helping to provide a bridge between the actions and investments of individuals and communities and the property insurance industry. So where there is already really good work happening, where we can layer our pieces in and work side by side with you, we want to try to figure out ways to do that. What that will look like from a cost perspective, I can't stand here and tell you today. But we do want, when eventually Wildfire Prepared comes to Arizona, we would be open to exploring that with you.
Great. No, I appreciate that. And I think that's going to be fundamental to building the trust with our constituents and our residents to support them in taking action and also, frankly, being able to fund some of those actions because not everybody can afford to do the work that we're talking about. And I think all those communities I mentioned are looking at either are doing or are planning for some pretty important and creative ways to fund those kind of improvements. So with that, should we go ahead and transition over to the City of Flagstaff?
I just want to say thank you all for your time and your attention. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me in the coming days, weeks, months with any questions. We're always happy to engage with you.
Well, and
Great.
thank you again for being here. And as I said, incredibly informative information and really appreciate it. And we are recording this, and so we will make it available to the public here to be able to look at this. And I think they will learn a lot. So thank you so much, and thanks for your information.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Michael.
Goodbye.
All right, turn it over to Paul.
And thank you for being with us this afternoon, taking some time out of your valuable afternoon. So
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Chair Horstman, so good to see you. Board of Supervisors, thank you for having me. I had the pleasure and the opportunity to meet with County Manager Bertelsen last week and invited me in to give some public comment today. And what I'm going to talk about, it's actually going to complement what Mr. Newman was laying out for us a little bit. So I guess the one thing that I would lead with is I would maybe invite questions as I go. That's okay, if that's a standard that we're good with. And I just want to say thank you, for having me in to discuss this important topic. I really appreciate listening for about the last hour about just how informed the Board of Supervisors is on this topic. I think that allows us to come in and have a higher level conversation, which is great. So really appreciate that. And then to Lucinda, we first had a conversation about this in classic Flagstaff fashion, walking our dogs on an observatory mesa about a month ago. So I'm here today just to kind of chat a little bit about a project that I'm in. Of course, yep. An effort that I'm involved in, complementary to what we just heard about IBHS, with an end state of having IBHS in the state of Arizona as a standard. A couple things that we offer here locally. I think we have some wildfire action guides. I think those may have made their way around the room. One thing I want to make sure that I offer everyone in the room today while I'm up here is a home assessment that we, within our program, we offer free of charge. So please reach out to our office, any community member, anyone, member of board, the supervisor, any county employee, please reach out to us and let's stand in your driveway and let's have a conversation about what a lot of this is. I think that's a really important step in everything that we're doing. So I'll lay this title out once, and then I'll kind of lead with what we affectionately call the WUI working group. And so that is a four-stakeholder member effort, originally coordinated by the Western Fire Chiefs Association and the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, which I'm sure a lot of folks in the room are familiar with. Gordon and Betty Moore is the funding mechanism for a lot of the work that we're working on. It's an ongoing discussion and effort between state fire chief organizations, insurance commissioners, for us in the state of Arizona, DIFI, state insurance trade associations, APCIA, and it sounds like you guys had the presentation from Ethan recently, a couple weeks ago. And then the state office that sets code. And so for us in the state of Arizona, that's DFFM. We're lucky enough to have a partner in this effort of DFM Director Tom Torres. And so that's going to be really important as we get to that part of our process where we're looking to bring IBHS into the state of Arizona. And so having him involved and helping set that code, excuse me, is a really important process. We're obviously all feeling the impacts of non-renewals, spiked rates due to insurance. Coming into the latest insurance cycle, which began in about 2020, we were realizing that legacy systems and practices were sporadically collecting data by different entities at different times, and that's resulted in uninformed catastrophic models, which has also resulted in the insurance industry not able to price risk effectively. If I were to define the problem statement for what we're running into, I think that is probably it. That's a lot of what we're working on, is building a system that's going to inform the insurance industry on how to better price risk at the community and neighborhood level. You heard Michael talk about it a little bit. It's not just parcel level homeowners that are dealing with this. This is something that we're experiencing at a community level, so we need to be able to set ourselves to better gather that data on how we can effectively reduce the risk across communities across northern Arizona. So some industry professionals that were involved. So this effort that we're involved in, the multi-state strategic realignment project, it involves 7 states: Arizona, California, Colorado, Idaho, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. As you heard Michael say, IBHS is now being used in 3 of those states, and there is a major effort to bring that into Arizona, to allow them in to help us partner in better informing and pricing our models. The process, the project that we're involved in, it's 3 phases. The WU Working Group project has 3 phases. Phase 1 was mainly around developing and beginning to identify those mitigation measures that matter, which Michael spoke to a little bit during his presentation. Phase 2, which was just completed, just a couple things to touch on there. The whole point of it was understanding existing options for data collection and drafting a plan at scale across those 7 states. So that's really what we're after doing. And going into phase 3 of this WUI data collection effort, we will begin to be able to implement that across communities. There are 30 to 50 communities across the western states that are going to be identified in that process, Flagstaff being one of them, which is something that we are certainly excited about, and I think that's going to give us a better opportunity to inform those models. Rationale of phase 2 really centered around three key principles: increasing the data availability, enhancing transparency, and fostering alignment in all the data and all the efforts that we're making to reduce risk in communities. the WUI Western states, in that effort that we're making, um, let me back up just a little bit, sorry. So the tool that we recognize that we need is a model, is an opportunity to better collect data. So that's something that we're referring to as the WUI Data Commons, the WDC is what we're commonly referring to. And that should focus on the ability to collect difficult data, difficult to obtain, rather than compete for readily available data in communities that we've made legacy decisions on that have not informed our processes nearly as well as they should. The WDC should be able to focus or able to process and compile both parcel and community level data. We heard Michael talk about that a little bit. I think that's something that is going to be really important for us in feeding these systems, feeding these models, understanding exactly what our mitigation efforts look like. So it's not just about collecting data about the current state that we're in, but about what the mitigation efforts look like and what they need to look like moving forward. There should be verified, inexpensive, easy to operate technology. And that's where our program at the Flagstaff Fire Department comes in. Excuse me. So we have been involved in, again, those home assessments, collecting that parcel level data and using some of the technology available. One of them is an app called WUI, W-I-I, that allows us to create a vertical alignment and feed data back into the system that is going to complement that process. The WUI Data Commons is already occurring across 3 of the 7 states. Arizona, we were the last to come into the process. And this is going to allow us that opportunity to compile both that parcel and community level data.
So if I can, just real quick, IBHS, I guess they have done that from a very different perspective. They've kind of done it from a laboratory perspective, if you will. And I guess you all are really looking at an opportunity to collect data and mitigation efforts that work with existing homes in place. Is that a way to look at this?
Yeah, and I think something important for me to touch on is, going back to what the original title of the effort is, that multi-state strategic WUI alignment project we're working on, the WUI working group. It's those 4 key stakeholders that we talked about. And for me, I'm here representing not only the Flagstaff Fire Department, but the Arizona Fire Chiefs Association and the Arizona Fire Districts. And so this is an effort that's occurring across the state of Arizona, not just here within the city of Flagstaff and our surrounding communities. So an important piece of that for me is representing not only the Flagstaff Fire Department, but all the different fire district chiefs in the room, those county response entities that are so important in Coconino County. Gives us a better opportunity to empower them, not overload them with work necessarily, but use them at capacity to better inform our process. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Well, and meeting homeowners one-on-one to do individual assessments, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So, which I think would be very beneficial.
Yeah, that's the effort that we're making here locally. And so within our wildland fire management program at the Flagstaff Fire Department, we have a program where we go out and we do home assessments. We stand in driveways, we go over all those mitigation measures that matter, what we've agreed upon, what that looks like. Supervisor Begay alluded to it a little bit. Michael talked about it in his presentation, that fuel-free 5, that zone of 0 to 5, that's incredibly important. In that wildland fire action guide that's going around, that's meant to be more of a checklist. And so I think that would marry up well with some of the presentation materials that came out of what Michael talked about today. But that's meant to be something used a little bit more locally. And we talk about zone 0, 1, 2, 3. He talks about that, or that's presented a little bit in that PowerPoint presentation. but just giving us a better idea of what things need to look like on the ground level. I think coming into phase 3 of our project and everything that we're looking like, what we're looking to do is set up Arizona communities to be better prepared to help us synthesize and gather that data. That's going to be a really important piece of what we're doing. So home assessments for us, that allows us, reading the tea leaves a little bit and understanding what the process is going to look like. We can engage in that data collection now through one of the 3 verified applications. Again, the one we use is WUI, W-I-I. And then that is beginning to feed what is going to be our WUI Data Commons, which is the tool agreed upon by all stakeholders in the process to help better price risk in the future. And then insurance industries throughout the Western states have agreed to use that as the data collection system that they're making decisions on, if that makes sense. So that's that's kind of where we have it tied together locally. We're making those efforts here within the city of Flagstaff, in the local communities at the fire district level, and then throughout the state of Arizona. One thing that we've realized that we want to be really careful about is not trying to legislate our way out of the problem. There have been cautionary tales, mainly out of California, with fair plans and some of those processes that can typically or have shown to overregulate a little bit. The fair plan's been around since 1968, and that has put risk on local, state, federal governments that cannot be sustained to pay out those policies, especially when we're talking about Lahaina, Pacific Palisades, some of those.
So I agree that you can't legislate yourself out of a problem. That usually creates a bigger problem. And it sounds like that may have happened, in fact, in California. But we also are in a situation where we want to come up with a standard of mitigation efforts that can be acceptable or will be accepted by the insurance industry to reduce premiums and hopefully increase insurability for homes.
Right. Yeah. I think that, something in my research today, I was looking at some stuff, and something that really stuck with me is policy actions intended to change insurance behavior without actually reducing risk will force the underlying pillars out of balance and will accelerate the collapse in the current catastrophe scenario that we're in. So better informed models, understanding the different steps in the process, what we're doing to collect data, and then what that's going to look like going into, again, phase 3 of our project, the WUI working group. The tool to inform that system is going to be that WUI Data Commons. And as we begin rolling that out this fall, that's going to be an opportunity for me to come back and give some formal presentations and better engage partners across Northern Arizona.
Supervisor Antiveros.
This question might be for you or it might be for Highland. We're kind of we're trying to see, is there something that is actually working? And so I know that there is a Firewise community in Northern Arizona, and that is Flagstaff Ranch. Does Highland have any information on cancellations, premium increases? Is that a community that works? Is that an example that works and that insurance companies like?
So Firewise's great program is very well socialized in the state of Arizona. It's been around for 30 plus years. It's certainly not something that we want to get away from. IBHS coming in is not meant to replace that. That's not necessarily a standard recognized by the insurance industries currently. That certainly isn't enough of an effort when we're talking about parcel and community level mitigation to affect rates. There are some examples of discounts being applied in Firewise communities, but those aren't necessarily affecting zip code level insurance industry as a whole. So we're not seeing those impact non-renewals or those spiked premiums. So we need something, again, Firewise, well socialized, very well accepted in the state of Arizona, but a legacy system that's collected data a little bit in a vacuum. And so we need to bring these industry professionals, mainly DIFI state regulators, into the conversation, and we're forging a little bit of a new path. We're making decisions that we're hearing from the insurance industry are actually going to be able to impact rates and the way that we do business. I think from our perspective as fire department, fire professionals in the room, and this could potentially take a decade or two to realize, but the best thing that we can do, Michael spoke to it a little bit, is stop burning down homes, right? Like get away from these conflagrations. We've had, Michael referenced London of 1666. We had Chicago, the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. I mean, that wasn't that long ago, right? 150 plus years ago, when we're looking at the overlay of policy and everything that we've experienced in the fire space since then, what got us out of those issues was code. And realizing that those codes have been effective, and the last thing that we want to do is begin to step away from those. So when we talk about legislation, when we're talking about not wanting to do anything on the front end, is we don't want to try to legislate the symptom, not the problem. Right, coming in and trying to force the insurance industry to do something that their data is telling them not to do. The best thing that we can do as communities, counties, partners across the state is work to mitigate that risk at scale. The 30 to 50 communities that are going to be involved in this process, that's what we're looking to accomplish. How do we do that? What is the industry looking for? What do we need at zip code scale? And really it comes down to two issues. How do we inform the catastrophic models so that the right data is getting memorialized in maps, things like that? And then how do we help them better price risk? I don't think that we're ever going to be in a situation where we're seeing major discounts in the insurance industry, anything along those lines. What we want to do is we want to keep our customers, our community members in the marketplace and give them a fair opportunity. What we've kind of talked about within our working group is having 2 to 3 vendors per zip code at least keeps things competitive in the short term, until we can realize the long-term effects of better mitigating that risk and what that's going to look like. That at least gives us a place to kind of start.
If I could do just a follow up, and Lucinda, this might be for you, because I know DIFI has completed their meetings, right? And okay, so who are they going to be advising? They're going to be taking this information somewhere, and is IBHS in there? And in Arizona, do the insurance companies seem receptive to this? Because it seems like we might be heading to an answer. Like I feel a bit optimistic today. I know, maybe I shouldn't, but I know.
They did conclude their process. They had their last meeting. But what I'm understanding, and Paul chime in here, is that they're not making, I've not heard the word that specific recommendations are going to be made, that they're going to share their findings. So they basically went through a findings process to develop a basic understanding, similar to what we're doing right now, right? But at the state level, to really understand what is the issue, what's contributing to the issue, and so forth. But there isn't specific legislation. There has been discussion about, through various stakeholders, to take that conversation further and try to identify, are there areas where various stakeholders could work together to take legislation to the legislature, right? So, and that,
Yeah, so I just
Eric,
give,
Ben,
yeah, to give some
right.
background to that in the government affairs side, DIFI's group has been meeting, and it's really a a matter of the wording here, but instead of saying that group is saying, this is the recommendation, whether it be statutory changes through the legislature, administrative rule changes by DIFI or such to mandate or to prescribe or even to encourage, they're saying, we heard this and we believe this to be true, or something along those lines, right? They're giving those findings and results of findings, so no recommendations. The Wildfire Review Team, which I think Battalion Chief, you are part of, the new one created under a new bill. There's a new 9-member task force for mitigation of efforts of wildfire. That will also be issuing a report. I do believe that does specifically call for recommendations. So there's 2 task force, one's that's wrapping up and one that'll start up here. One is going to call for recommendations. The one you were referencing that we had sort of put hopes on, looking back at our past advocacy agenda, is not going to be making recommendations, is reporting findings. But there are members of that team and that stakeholder team that are picking that up, and that really leads to our conversation with CSA about what kind of bill could we endorse that may come up with some of these prescriptive measures.
Yeah, the DIFI Resiliency Mitigation Council, they wrapped up last month, and that's exactly right. They're gonna publish a report on their findings. They basically had 3 or 4 presenters per meeting come in and cover kind of every different aspect of the insurance crisis. And all that they're gonna do is report on those findings. And then the latest bill that's coming out of the House, HB 2054, that initiative is a Fire Insurance Review Task Force. That's going to be chaired by Director Tom Torres, originally planned to be chaired by the Director of DIFI. But with the current state of DIFI and without them being without a director, they're going to kind of switch roles. So the acting director will act as the vice chair. Director Tom Torres will be in that chair role. And then, yeah, they're going to select I think it's a 9-member committee. They've got direction to bring in members from the home insurance industry, fire specialists, all different kinds of folks representing the crisis across the board. Nice thing about that for us, and with the effort that we're making, is that everything we're doing is in alignment, which I really like right now, because we have Director Tom Torres working with us as the 4th member or stakeholder in the WUI mitigation effort, and then also chairing this insurance task force through House Bill 2054. So we're all talking a lot. We're working to align our processes. I think one of the biggest concerns that we've had is if we start doing things differently and we get a year or 2 down the road, we will not have served the community member any differently than we're trying to right now.
And that is still where the challenge lies. I think there's many different fronts to take on this issue. One is the data element that's really the focus of the WUI working group, which is needed because we've got to come to some understanding about what data is generated, how does it influence insurance, how they set insurance premiums and risk, and so all that piece. But then there's the actionable piece. How do we actually support people with doing something? Because we can all say, okay, now we've got great data and we really thoroughly understand the risk, but if we still haven't done anything to improve people's ability to mitigate the risks, then we're going to be in the same place where we are right now. And I look at my neighborhood. I live up in Shadow Mountain. It's probably one of the worst in the city. And you can't, go over Cedar Hill. When you look up at that entire upper side, you don't see a single rooftop. That's a problem because we love our trees. And so how to work through that neighborhood by neighborhood, it's not going to be easy. And we know people don't necessarily have the resources to go through and, take out their decks and do all the things they need to do, right? I look at Missoula's doing they're doing they do a volunteer level effort, but that's not even meeting the need. So they're now looking at a wildfire resilience fund where they go out and fundraise through United Way and other partners to develop like a revolving loan fund that would help people be able to afford to do the measures. My key question is, hopefully on this 9-member, where are the mortgage companies? They own most people's homes. They're the reason we have fire insurance as a basic, is that they want protection of their asset that they own. They need to be a partner in this and a player in this. They're in the financial market, having them support people financially to do this work, to me, is a natural, right? They own the asset, you know, it's their market, and we own it in joint with them. So anyway, there's a lot to be done on a lot of different fronts.
You know, as Supervisor Ontiveros said, I do feel a little bit hopeful too. I don't know why, but I do feel a little bit hopeful. And I think the reason is what you said, Paul, at the very beginning is, you know, you represent the Arizona Fire Chiefs, you know, the Coconino County, City of Flag, other municipalities are working together to build a system that will inform the insurance companies on what needs to be done to mitigate the risk to start pricing insurance. And that's the key, and that's been the key that we've been talking about throughout these last three presentations. So I feel good about that. I feel good that we're all on the same page of what we're trying to get accomplished here. So
Now, several months ago, it's about reducing risk.
yeah,
Is it a
Yeah.
manufactured risk? There is a real risk.
yeah.
Yeah, we subscribe to the.
Madam Chair, I cannot hear.
Well, yeah, I think when you use it, you've got to use the mic. Okay.
We subscribe to what we call the 5 E's of community risk reduction. A couple of those are engineering and education. Some of the data shows those that have relocated to WUI environments want to live here for the reasons that Lucinda just stated, right? We love our trees. We love what that environment allows us to do recreationally, all those different types of things. People intending to move or stay in those environments for the next 25 years do not intend to move out of areas to where they can build smarter, right? And so, I mean, the WUI, it's where people, property, and intermittent wildfire risk come together. And one point I want to make is I don't think that we have scar tissue, right? We've experienced quite a bit of wildfire here. Coming into 2020, which began really our last 7 to 8 year insurance cycle, and all those fires we experienced across the West that informed that cycle, those are playing out now. So how can we better prepare for the next one that's coming?
But there's a reason everybody lives in Flagstaff,
That's
isn't
it.
there?
That's it. Well, yeah. Well, well, thank you for your time. I will come back and give some informed presentations on the work that we're working on.
Mhm.
But I think the big message we want to get across today is that fire districts across Coconino County are represented, making efforts at the parcel community level, and we are hyper-focused on reducing that risk.
Supervisor Begay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you again for the presentation. I'm still having a little thing about everybody's kind of doing their little booklets and stuff like that. I mean, they're almost the same. I'm looking at a couple of them here. And I think we have to have one voice as to how, like within Arizona, how we can curtail a lot of these things that are, well, the bottom line is we're trying to reduce premium and then insurability of the insurance. And so with that in mind, you know, I'm just thinking there's so many legwork that needs to be done. You know, Lucinda kind of mentioned that. And I think also that if we're going to be going to the legislatures or anybody with that, we need to have like a unison, one voice type of thing, where we have maybe a document that's pretty much close to within our areas. So I'm just kind of thinking about that again. You know, we have to go back down to the basics and go from there as far as for Flagstaff area. So I just want to say that I'm glad that you're representing us. You've heard us, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be thinking about that too. How do we? I mean, it's good to get together on a topic like this and get everybody involved. Where's the city? Where's, you know, other people that are in that live in Flagstaff or that have constituents in Flagstaff, or so those pieces are missing. What are their thoughts and what are they doing? Do we agree? Do they have some of these issues? You know, all of that has to come on the table. So I would recommend that we all meet as governments, face to face and just, talk it out and start from there, see where we go with that. So that would be my recommendation as far as listening to the presentations. And again, this is a phase 3 of what Lucinda has brought us. And, with Lucinda bringing these topics to this information to us, or the subject to us, and then with your, involvement and stuff like that, I feel good about it. But we just have to, have a voice, where, and then how do they rate the insurance premiums? Who is there an expert that would tell us, this is the way we do that, and that person should be sitting at the table at one point in time too. So I just want to say that, and I'm really glad that we had this presentation done today. And it means a lot because, that's one thing that we've been struggling with as a board. And, we've been going here and there, for answers, but, and with the help of the staff, and I know they're trying their best too, but it's everybody's issue here in Flagstaff, how do we help them? So that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up. Maybe we could all meet as, people, government officials and departments, talk about it. How can we do this? And again, what are the requirements of the bank, or, the insurance people, and how they rate those, that even goes back down to, again, the individual inspections at home. What do they have around their house that's kind of common, or maybe that's something that won't help, to bring the premiums down or whatever, So it's good. So I'm just thinking way back over here, and everybody's kind of over here. So, but anyway, that's me. But I just want to say thank you so much for the presentation. I loved it. I think that's it's a step forward for me, as a board member, and I support any efforts, to help our people out there. Thank you.
Supervisor Begay, thank you for your comments. And one point I wanted to make today is I think part of our reality as local governments and decision makers, and when we're talking to community members and constituents, is we're going to have to be comfortable making decisions in the gray, probably for the next year. And then to your point about those decision makers being at the table, they are, and they're committed to the process that we're engaged in.
I think that was the intent of DIFI, quite frankly, is to get the stakeholders together and
Yeah.
get folks working together. And it's one of the reasons for quite frankly, these informative groups here, informative meetings with the Board of Supervisors, and to include the fire districts, include the cities. Williams is another, for us, because we're all in this together, and we all need to figure out a way together.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And I know we have,
Vice Chair has his hand
I'm
up.
sorry.
Sorry.
I didn't know that. Geronimo Vasquez, Supervisor Vasquez. Oh, now I see your hand, and now I see you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you. Just wanted to comment. Thank you for this presentation, and I didn't get to make comments on the previous presentation, but just wanted to say that it's really illuminating to see what's going on and the direction we're going. We definitely, our communities need this because the need is there, and we need to figure out a way to get insurance companies to help cover our houses in our county. And we need to make sure that all of our institutions in our county are on the same page moving forward. And so thank you for this presentation, the local fire, because we need to understand what each other are doing so that we can have a united front moving forward on dealing with this issue. And so I look forward to the future presentations and seeing what direction we as a county can go to help make this situation better. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Vasquez. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you again for being here. And I know we have some folks from also the fire districts. I don't know if any of them wanted to say a few words, or Paul did it. All right. I love that. So thank you. And thank you, by the way, for being here and being part of this discussion, and for being involved in the whole process as we work forward on this. So thank you. We know this guy.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Supervisors. Good afternoon. Jay Christelman again. I just want to talk a little bit. I know we're over time, so I'll try to keep it brief, but I'd like to be able to answer any questions you may have. We talked briefly about what we've done already through the subdivision ordinance and requiring new subdivisions to be Firewise ready. The challenge there is most homes built in the county aren't in a subdivision. They're built in a lot split area. So those elements don't apply. Lucinda and I, 2 Fridays ago, we met with a gentleman who created the Wildfire Partners in Boulder County, and I had some very specific questions for him based on the research that I had started doing when Lucinda created this or started to create this series of presentations. One of them was, do you see new builds in the last few years have a problem getting fire insurance? That answer is no. That's my research has indicated the same. I've contacted some people that have recently funded their projects. They haven't had problems getting fire insurance or insurance in general. That said, I don't know what their rate was. I wasn't really comfortable asking them, well, what's your rate? Is it reasonable? So I didn't ask. I don't know if their rates are exorbitant or if they're reasonable or not. But new builds are not having a problem getting coverage. What we did find through the gentleman at Boulder County was that 8 in 10 folks who had existing homeowners insurance problems, either they got dropped or their rates were doubled or whatever, 8 in 10 of those had existing claims. So they had hail damage or they had flood damage or otherwise had some type of damage. So there's only so much that the building codes can help existing homes. It would be a voluntary program. Lucinda, do you have anything to add about our meeting with the gentleman from Boulder County that I missed before I go on to the bill?
Well, there's lots to add. They've learned a lot over the years and have a pretty fun, and I think their dynamic is so different already that he can say what he said, that it isn't having that much impact because they've already affected thousands of homes, and know that a lot of that came about starting in 2022 after they'd had the Marshall Fire, I think, which was 2020 or 21. And then people said, we've got to do more. We have to make the programs we have permanent. We have to do more. And they actually went to the voters and got a 1-cent sales tax, and they're funding that entire program now. And all the different components of that. So, so it's, different communities have different experiences, right? And so, but yeah, there are other things. We know even all the disasters across the country are affecting our rates, right? Not even just wildfire, hurricanes, all the other dramas, and hail is another really big one. Actually, more claims are submitted based on hail than anything else. So,
and I know you're going to go on to zoning, but before you do, I know DIFI has really been working with, all the stakeholders. How about the Arizona Department of Insurance? Are they part of this? What are they doing about this? And I think it's great. I loved it, what Paul was saying, inform the insurance system on how to price insurance, based on showing mitigation efforts that actually work and using scientific data and collecting data from our communities. Where is the Arizona Department of Insurance on this?
well, that is DIFI. They
Are they where, I guess, are they willing to come up and I guess I should say, are they willing to come up and accept a set of principles to utilize for pricing and utilize for insurability? Or maybe they haven't gotten that far.
I don't think they've gotten that far. I think that's what's in this whole process is ultimately how will that, because they do set the rates, how will that influence the rate setting mechanisms?
So this report on the
Right.
findings hopefully will start that.
Start that process, right? So
And then, oh, sorry.
I'm just wondering who are they that the findings are being reported to?
to the governor and the legislature, from
Okay,
what
okay,
I understood.
okay. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
confirm that.
I'm dropping things. Just DIFI's political situation is an agency that has not had many times direct view from the governor's office. And, we think we could say the governor would just say, go do this and it would be done. It's been an agency that's operated at an arm's
Right.
length for a long time. And
Right.
The culture there is not one to take that political pressure with an immediate reaction, right? Now, that does not excuse them from their responsibility over the insurance industry at all.
Yeah.
But it has been one that's been kept at an arm's length from a lot of the political impulses, but that's what this crisis is bringing, is
Right.
political impulse,
Right.
right? And so making that culture responsive to that takes some time of engagement with that culture, and this leadership
Yep.
crisis, I would say
Yep.
there
Yep.
is reflective of that, trying to get the right leaders in place to be responsive to the calls that continue to
Right.
come in to all 15 counties. Like we talked to CSA, all 15 counties deal with this in some way. So
And
if
Eric,
Wi-Fi's not
that's-
moving quick
that's
enough,
it.
that's some understanding of why.
That's absolutely it. So,
Thank you. That is good information. All right.
Thank you, Lucinda. A little bit about what community development is anticipating doing to hopefully positively affect the rates and the availability of insurance is, as the battalion chief mentioned, through the adoption of building codes. We're currently on the 2018 ICC suite of building codes. It's the International Code Council. We are working with our partners at the City of Flagstaff to analyze the 2024 suite of building codes. And as part of that, we're looking at the IBHS wildfire prepared, most of, if not all of those elements that you saw on the slide from Mr. Newsom. We're hoping all of those items that we're looking at are enforceable. They're things that we as building inspectors can go to the job site when we issue a certificate of occupancy. We can see, yes, you have done all of these things. Your trees are 5 feet from, the canopy's 5 feet from the roof or the eave. Soffits and crawl spaces and attic spaces are all vented with fine steel mesh to prevent ember intrusion. Those are things that I have suggested and floated by my advisory group as this is what we're looking at. We would like some input back on this. There's generally considerable support for these elements. Yes, it's going to increase the cost of a home. That is always a sensitive topic, and I do believe I heard the chair as well as Supervisor Ontiveros during our last presentation talk about the cost benefits ratio or analysis. So that's always a touchy subject. How much is it going to increase the cost of a home? To quote Mr. Newsom, it varies. It's widely variable. Depends on the size of the home. It depends on what elements we decide to go adopt as part of the 2024 suite of codes. I would like to thank Nate Wren and IT. We're already starting to put elements into place to identify the urban interface code. So we have a parcel viewer layer that was created by our GIS team that it's superimposed on the county parcel site so that we can go in and see per APN, assessor's parcel number, is this parcel in the urban interface? Then these codes, if they're chosen to be adopted, these elements from the IBHS wildfire prepared program, we know as staff automatically, yes, these elements need to be in this place in the urban interface. There's the urban interface. You heard the battalion chief. It's wooey. I can't stand that. And now I say urban interface because I don't like wooey. It's a personal thing. That aside, there is a variety of elements of the urban interface. On the parcel viewer, it's red to green or white, which is not in the urban interface at all, because we know places like Greenhaven, there isn't any issue with the urban interface there. Sand doesn't burn. If it did, you'd then create glass. That aside, little levity. So we're looking at different elements of how we as staff could manage it without requesting additional staff. I feel that we can do that with the elements from the IBHS program. And I'm keeping it pretty brief here, but is there any questions so far before I get into kind of the challenges we see associated with some of this? Thank you. So,
I'll just bring the challenges.
okay. Okay.
They were hopeful, Jay.
Not challenges.
Okay.
Well, how can I word that, Andy? Maybe
It's a SWOT analysis.
positive opportunities. The existing homes. So again, that's where we're seeing the most impact with the insurance problem is those existing homes. Lucinda and I had talked about this with the gentleman from Boulder County with the wildfire prepared communities. And if it's a voluntary program, that's no problem. If it gets too excessive, we may need additional field staff to help manage that. That's always a touchy subject as well. How do we justify additional staff? If it's more of a voluntary program that gets not a tremendous amount of support because of cost. Like Supervisor Ontiveros had mentioned, there's always going to be homeowners who just don't participate for whatever reason. Either they physically cannot, or they can't afford to, or I don't know, they just have an aversion to cleaning the property, and they like the thick trees on their property and pine needles everywhere. So that could be a challenge depending on how much interest we get in a voluntary program for existing construction. Permits would be required if somebody changed out their roof, if somebody changed out their windows, if it's the fenestration, if it's like for like size. We don't issue a permit for that, so there wouldn't be any cost. There wouldn't be a wait for an inspection or a plan review. Bless you. Siding, 6 inches above any new construction you go see, there's already 6 inches with 2015 building codes. They're 6 inches above grade of non-combustible. It's the foundation or the CMU stem wall before it gets to siding. A little bit about the building codes. When we do adopt new building codes, they inherently get more fire resistive construction every code cycle. So that's a positive in itself. So that's really the only challenge that we see is how as staff would we manage the existing upgrades to homes? How onerous for staff could that be? We do not anticipate adopting the entirety of the urban interface code or the entirety of the IFC, which is the International Fire Code, for staffing reasons. However, the IBHS program is sort of that perfect balance of both of those codes, the urban interface with defensible space, as well as the IFC features that we had in that slide. So it's kind of that perfect balance from a staffing perspective of what we as a county can manage from at least the community development department. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Comments, questions, members of the board?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Supervisor Fowler.
Yes, thank you. This is a topic that is very complex, and we have to figure out how we as a county will have to approach it. And we have a lot of, right now, our home prices are very high. Our building code sounds like, Jay, you're gonna have to, what about, are there homes that are gonna end up being grandfathered in, and those are already under, like, the existing homes? I'm trying to figure out how do we get people to be able to say, yes, I will do this. I guess there has to be a whole slew of programs, fire-wise, is people have bought into that, it looks like, for the most part. And then now we're looking at actual structural of buildings, and how I'm just trying to figure out how we do that. I'm just trying to, it's just a whole process. I know there's incentives that need to be done, but we don't have the funding. Where that funding come from? The state, I don't see the state taking action on this. They can't even take action on the gas sales tax, and a number of other issues that they don't want to go there. So I cannot see the state taking any kind of initiative on this right now.
And of course, if you're grandfathered in, then that takes away the whole idea of neighborhoods.
Yeah, and that neighborhood, your next door neighbor, all of that comes into play. I think there's a lot of internally, it sounds like internally, needs to be quite a bit of homework that needs to be done. Where are those, if this was to take place, where are the hot spots that potentially could happen? Where would those communities be with all the, where would be, like, maybe a pilot program? Where would that be, and how would that take place? Like, how many homes right now are at risk. We're being told it's 93 to 99%. And in our county, you know, like in Greenhaven, there's no trees there, but there could potentially be some kind of fire with, and how would they be able to withstand this? And then we have the homeowners association. How many homeowners association are there, and how many of them would be willing to take this up with their homeowners? So those would be my mind. It's just thinking out loud, I guess. That's what I'm doing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thinking the complexities.
And Madam Chair and Supervisor Fowler, if the building codes were adopted, we're currently tentatively looking at adoption of June 30th of next year for the 2024 codes. There's a 180-day grace period, so to speak, where a designer could either design under the 2018s, which we're currently under, or the 2024. Anything after that adoption would be required to be built to the 2024 code, which again, the IBHS elements for wildfire prepared homes we're looking at adopting that above and beyond base building code. Again, it's sort of that good balance between the urban interface as well as the International Fire Code. I think education among communities is a huge driver for I don't know if it would be a pilot program, but just participation among existing communities. I have started discussions, as a matter of just a couple hours ago with Chief Miller, but before that with Chief Lee Antonides with Ponderosa, about getting input from every one of the chiefs from the 17 fire districts that are in Coconino County. To answer one of your additional questions, most of the county, but not all, most of it is in the urban interface, wildland urban interface, to varying degrees. So I've looked at the map that Nate with GIS created, and it's very informative. That's another discussion that we'll likely be having is, what are the elements based on the urban? If it's located within the urban interface, do we go the entirety of the IBHS proposed, or do we create a tiered approach so that we minimize the increase in the cost of the home, because that's inevitably going to happen. So lots of discussions taking place. You know, Cinda and I started talking about this when these presentations started, and there's lots to discuss and think about.
Well, what I like is that we're having the discussion. And I like the fact that, for example, the city of Flagstaff are doing assessments. I like the fact that we in Coconino County are getting the education out for what it looks like to help mitigate the damage or the dangers to your home. I like the fact that we're having this discussion, not only in terms of what we're doing on a broad scale in terms of forest restoration, but what we all individually can do and are responsible for, and then what we can do as neighborhoods to reduce the risk from the neighborhood. So, you know, it's been and will continue to be an ongoing discussion. And then I think the key is bringing along into this discussion the insurance companies on what is appropriate mitigation, what is scientifically based mitigation, for them to be able to make decisions on the costs and insurability of a home. And then hopefully bring in other stakeholders like the mortgage companies and others that also have a stake in this as well. So, Supervisor Ontiveros.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm glad that we're having the conversation. I'm glad that I think you said that you're in dialogue with all of the fire chiefs in Coconino County that are going to be participating in this conversation. I agree. I'm glad that we're involving these players, these stakeholders, if you will, in the conversation. Perhaps why I was hopeful today was because, as it was pointed out, this is science-backed and apparently kind of insurer-recognized information that we received today. And maybe that's my reason for optimism, that maybe we actually have something to shoot for here. And I think that we have alignment, as Mr. Altrogi talked about, kind of alignment amongst partners. And I think we're headed in somewhat of the right direction. Yeah. I feel like we're going somewhere now. I'm not sure where, but I just feel like we're kind of starting to go in the right direction.
And I think that's what the series has been, is to, one, really understand what is the problem, and then start to see what are opportunities to move forward. And there are different initiatives, different programs out there. And I know we're going to have some internal discussion in the next few weeks. And I think that'll be important. And as was mentioned earlier, the strategic planning process. And is that going to be a discussion point, this issue or not? There are a lot of issues facing the county, a lot of different issues facing the county. And where does this stack up in that there are a lot of issues facing, and a lot of,
there may be more.
a lot more, and a lot more impacts financially. I know there was a meeting today on social and health services that was, I understand there was a lot of concern expressed out of the governor's office. And so, there's a lot facing, and these aren't simple times, and this is not a simple issue. It's not a one and done. You throw something together and throw it out there. So we just need to keep forging ahead, learn what we can. Others have been down this path and doing this for many years. And, we know what the pieces are. And I think we'll just have to decide what is the right set of pieces that we mobilize here, what's important to our communities. Thank you. Thank you, Jay.
And any other comments, questions, members of the board? Any wrap up?
Madam Chair, members of the board, I
yeah.
just want to thank all of our fire professionals for being here today. I know it was a bit impromptu with both Paul and Jay, but clearly we have local experts and professionals that are capable of tackling this issue from a local level. And so just really appreciate Lucinda putting together the outside presenters, and then for our local professionals being willing to come in and speak on fairly short notice and just talk about what they know and give us a direction forward. And this group in this room can take that direction forward. So just want to thank Paul and all of the fire folks for being here, and Jay. And so, yeah, thank you. And big, heavy topic. And as Lucinda had noted, a lot of major issues facing us as a local government, and there may be more tomorrow. And we sat this morning and looked at my board in my office on all of the spheres of influence that we can have and the things that are out there that need our assistance with funding priority. And that list, frankly, continues to grow. And so really looking forward to having those conversations with you as a board as we work together. So thank you.
Well, we wish we had a quite frankly, more simple solution and a more immediate solution, because I know it's affecting our homeowners now. It's affecting all of us. As I said, we're all in this together, but I think together we're trying to forge a way forward, and really appreciate everybody working together on this. And we'll continue. We'll continue. So thank you, and thank you, Lucinda, and for bringing these forward to us. And I know we're looking forward to more discussions. And I know we're having a city-county meeting coming up, City of Flag and Coconino County meeting, and it would be good for further discussions there as well.